All right, so now we are going to go back and kind of take the problems in problem order at this point, and we're going to start with factoring when you have 4 or more terms. Okay, again, you always want to look for a greatest common factor first, but if we're looking at these, there is no greatest common factor, and they both have 4 terms. So the type of factoring we're going to do here is factor by grouping. Right, and for factor by grouping, most of the time you're going to be able to just take those first 2 terms and then take the last 2 terms as a group and work with those separately and eventually put them back together. So we're going to start with the ones I've boxed in red here. For that pair of terms, you have a greatest common factor of a squared. So now, if I take an a squared from both of those terms, divide both of those terms by a squared, I'm going to get a minus 4. The red box is done. Now let's take a look at the blue box. This term is positive, so I'm going to go ahead and put a plus here. Now, my GCF in the blue box is a 3. So if I divide both of the terms in my blue box by 3, I end up with a minus 4. When you factor by grouping, these 2 parentheses should end up being identical, and they are. That's a good thing. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to write down that identical parenthesis here. That is kind of like your overall greatest common factor. So if we take and pull it out, undistribute it from both of those terms, I am going to be left with my a squared and my plus 3. That is going to go in my second parenthesis, and now it is completely factored. Okay? So if you're looking for a short or easy way to think about this, once you've got your greatest common factor for the 2 different boxes done, put that common parenthesis out front, and then put the leftover stuff in the second parenthesis. So when I take out my a minus 4, my leftover stuff is a squared. When I take a minus 4 out of here, my leftover stuff is plus 3. Now let's take a look at number 5. For number 5, I don't have a greatest common factor, so I'm going to group the first 2 terms together and the last 2 terms together. So in the red box, my GCF is x squared. That will leave me with x plus 5 in my parenthesis. In the blue box, this term is negative, so I'm going to put a minus. Now, my greatest common factor for both of these is 2, but take a look, I'm actually putting a negative 2 out here. So if I take this term and divide it by negative 2, I get a positive x. This term divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 5. So once again, my parentheses are the same, like they should be. So I'm going to put that common parenthesis out front. My leftover stuff will be the x squared and the minus 2. This is my completely factored answer. So now, problem number 6. You've got to go back to step 1, and that is to always check for a greatest common factor before you do anything else. So, for number 6, if you look, I can divide all of these terms by 2. So I'm going to do that first. So here's my 2. I'm going to use brackets again. Divide this by 2 gives me 21. Divide this by 2 gives me minus 7y. Divide by 2 is 3x, and divide by 2 makes that negative xy. And now, inside that big set of brackets, I want to group things because I have 4 terms left inside those brackets. So when I group these two together, I'll have a greatest common factor. And then I will group these two together and find the greatest common factor. So my 2, let me slide this up a little bit. My 2 that's out front is going to stay out front. And now, for the stuff that is boxed in red, my greatest common factor there will be 7. Inside, that is going to leave me with 21 divided by 7 is 3. This term divided by 7 gives me a negative y. In my second box, in the one I've outlined in purple, my greatest common factor is not a number. This time it is a variable of x. So if I put a positive for my third term and an x in that parenthesis, divide this by x, I'm going to have a 3. Divide this by x, and I'm going to have a negative y. So now, inside my brackets, I have a set of like parentheses. So I'm going to move it out here because I'm running out of room. There's my bracket. My common parenthesis is 3 minus y. My leftover stuff is going to be this positive 7 plus x. And now, if you don't like the brackets and the parentheses, you can leave off the brackets. I use them just for clarification purposes. If you want to keep them in your answer, that's fine. If you want to take them out, that's fine too. So there is your factored answer. All right, so that is it for factor by grouping.